There's so many things now looking back at it that I would have been more mindful of. I think building a team is the only way to scale. I believe that wholeheartedly. In-house, in the office, every day, huddle meetings, conversations, KPI meetings, all those things go a long way. As long as you systematize and document all your training material, you're reducing how much legwork is going to take you to train the next person to move forward. I think it's a fabric that maintains excellence. I think it really just holds everything together and maintains the bar. Everyone understands the power of leverage when it comes to capital markets, like 20% down when they go get lended 80% of the value, but no one sees the value of leverage when it comes to documentation of systems and process. I think the bigger operators truly do concentrate on brand. And I think when you're a smaller guy, you will have.
Leo, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you've done hundreds of transactions in this space. I am curious to kind of take a step back and just kind of see how you got into the space in the first place.
No, great question. For me, it was a bit of a direct path, right? I went to school for finance, graduated, had a corporate job. I worked in mergers and acquisitions. I thought that was going to be a path for me, and I always thought that, I was always going to be in the finance field. And so I kind of spent some time and just saw my trajectory, and it just wasn't for me. I just didn't think that I was ever gonna be able to make enough money to be able to provide for me and my family, and I just needed to take a leap of my own. I reached out to some alums from my college that were working in the real estate investment field, and I was able to connect with, her name is Pamela, and she was like, hey, just listen to Bigger Pockets. I'm like, all right. So that was her advice week one. By week two, I was like, hey, I listen to every single podcast, so what's next here? Where are we going? Like, what are we doing? What's what? And then there I discovered kind of house hacking. As I was getting ready to make that pivot, it was right before COVID took place. And, I had my FHA loan, I was under owner occupied, I was already kind of saving money for it. And then right when I was going to get into it, COVID took place and all the prices in Boston just skyrocketed. And at that point, I was like, dude, I'm never going to find a deal that pencils. So we built Five Homes to be that solution, to be able to find off-market deals that made sense. As, I was still working in corporate, trying to make it work. And we built the Cliffs Glass Home, started marketing, off-marketing and knocking on doors and doing the best we can. And found our first flip that way. That flip turned into two turned into three, and where I was making more money kind of flipping houses and being a realtor than I was at my corporate job. And I was just working way too much. So at that point, I just quit and went all in.
I love it. I love it. And then, just so people understand where you're at now, what does the business look like today?
Yeah, we do roughly around 70 wholesale deals, give or take a year. This year, we're shooting for about 90 wholesale deals this year. We do around 70 million, on market sales, give or take. We have a team of 14 employees, and it's been great. And I run this with my fiance, Brianna. It's been a beautiful journey.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, what was the main problem? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but what was the main problem that you were trying to solve when starting this business?
Yeah, for me, it was more of a selfish one when I first got into it. I wanted to be able to provide a solution and to homeowners that made sense, but also find off-market deals or investment opportunities that made sense for our underwriting, right? It was a situation when everything on the market was just saturated. We were going to open houses. There was 20, 40 people just waiting to get into one property. It was honestly very demoralizing. So at that point, we wanted to solve being able to get a decent property under a nice building criteria. It made sense for us that we can flip.
Yeah. Why do you think so many investors, because I feel like a lot of people got in during COVID. What do you think about it? Was it everyone just kind of being home, working from home? Maybe they had more time to go to YouTube. But what was it about that time that had so many people hopping in?
I think it was a situation where it was the first time in everyone's life where they had a moment of pause and realized that kind of the hamster wheel just didn't make sense for them anymore. It was a moment
Mm,
of kind of where you didn't have the distractions of everyday life, and you had a moment to truly think and kind of look around and go like, do I want to continue in the path that I am on? Right? Because I think many people have this monotonous wheel where they're on it and they're just doing the same thing every day, and they don't truly realize kind of what is going on. And then coupled with the low interest rate, it just, money was cheaper than the cost of inflation at that point. So it just made sense for everyone.
mm. And then what kind of team do you have right now to do, that many transactions?
So we have 6 inside sales agents. We have 2 acquisition agents, and then myself that works as a sales manager. We have a display agent, and then we have Brianna that sits in the operations suite.
Awesome. So the 6 people in sales, that would be lead intake, and then the 2 acquisitions are closers?
Correct.
Okay. And then what are you doing for marketing right now? What's your main marketing stuff?
Do PPC, PPL, mailers. We do some cold calling here and there, but not too aggressively. And those are kind of like our forward marketing channels to now.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then when it comes to the team, I know a lot of people are scared to build a team. And I know you've gone through some interesting stuff with your teams in the past. What would you tell someone that's scared of, hiring a team and building a team?
I think it's one of those things, to give a little context. My first hire, I was 23 when I hired my first employer, right? So there's so many things now looking back at it that I would have been more mindful of. I think building a team is the only way to scale. I believe that wholeheartedly. It is one of those terrifying things to do because someone's entire livelihood depends on your outcome, but they are going to help you achieve that outcome,
Mhm.
right? And one of those changes in mindset where you have to see it as we're all rowing in the same direction as opposed to me rowing along, right? But without trainings, right processes, right? Without being on a management structure, without understanding that things that seem small or minus, things that are small to the most people really make a big difference. Like one-on-ones, KPI review meetings for them to understand the vision and goals of the company. All those things are huge, but I get it. When I hired my first person at 23, it was one of those scariest things I've ever done in my entire life. But now, it's just I can never see my business without.
Want to get motivated sellers that nobody knows about? Introducing 10x TV. If you want to create credibility in your market, find deals that nobody else knows about, and crush your competition, you need to check into TV commercials. It is the new buzz in the real estate investing industry since we introduced it several years ago. I've been using TV commercials myself for the last 12 years and it's absolutely crushed it. So if you want to learn how to get on TV and to do something that little to no people are doing right now, go to claimmymarket.com. Again, that's claimmymarket.com. We usually only work with 2 investors per market, so if you're interested, reach out to us and book a call to see if you can claim your market before anybody else does. Now back to the show.
And what do you hire all local or do you do VAs? Like what kind of structure do you have?
I prefer to have most people in-house as much as I possibly can. Like I said before, prior to this, I worked at a tech company. Um, and they were big on local culture, kind of, seeing me do what I want you to do, sort of emulate what I'm doing. And that's been a big push for us. We have an office here in Boston that we love and we spend a lot of time here. So we, built it out. We have a foods room. We have video games here. We spend a lot of time here. So we take the time to really make it feel like our space. And I think that goes a long way. I think virtual work, man, people have different opinions on that, but I'm a big believer that, in-house, in the office, every day, huddle meetings, conversations, KPI meetings, all those things go a long way.
I know a lot of investors, at least people that haven't made their first acquisition or close or hire, are scared to train someone that could be a competitor. What do you think correlates culture? Because I think it's very important, like to someone staying with you for a long time.
Right. Um, and that's a very common fear because it happens all the time. I think it's just part of the industry, right? It's one of these lower barrier to entry kind of situations where someone sees, how much a wholesale is, where our average wholesale is 35 grand, right? You see an acquisition guy, see 3 or 4 of those, you're like, oh, well, if I only, they did 60 this year. If I only did 2 or 3 of these, I'm going to be A-okay for myself. I think that's a very respectable fear. And I've had a few guys where I've trained them up in a year and a half, they go off and try to do it on their own. It's part of the business, right? But that shouldn't prevent you from trying to teach someone and grow someone as much as you possibly can to help you move to the next level. As long as you systematize and document all your training material, you're reducing how much legwork is going to take you to train the next person to move forward. So you
Mm.
always have that open kind of system and cycle that someone is going to rotate and move on from your business in a year and a half, 2 years. If you're lucky, 3, right? But it's the cyclical nature of this business. There's turnover all the time in those closer roles. Because either life circumstances changes, they don't see it as much as valuable anymore, is what it is. I learned that lesson kind of more times than I should have, but it's just what it is.
How important is culture to you? I know you mentioned the office and making it a space that people actually want to, even if they're off work, want to hang out at, right? How big is culture to you and the culture of your business?
I think it's a fabric that maintains excellence,
Mm.
right? I think it really just holds everything together and maintains the bar. We do 1% better huddles every morning with my sales department, where everyone kind of goes through their KPIs, what they achieved, and then we do a common role play where everyone kind of sees what's taking place. The entire level accountability stops everyone in that they're by themselves and they're part of a unit. And I think that's huge. And realistically, it really maintains the culture, but more importantly, it keeps the baseline for all of us, including myself. Right? When I miss our one-on-one huddle because I have other meetings, everyone say, hey man, we haven't had that. Or, every morning on Mondays, we do a core value shutout where we kind of mention anyone that, resembled or really showed a core value of ours. And we go, hey, this week, John Rula really got after it today because that's one of our core values. A PPL came in or a PVC came in, called it within 20 seconds, right? That's huge. And we kind of keep showing everyone that this is the standard and this is what we're looking for.
Mm. How long is too long for you when it comes to the phone being answered or called back?
We have a 2-minute rule. Well, if you have a missed call or lunch, you're calling back in 2 minutes. Um, we really hammer those type of things during our one-on-ones or our 1% better huddles. I think that constant feedback loop, that's something I've learned now as a more seasoned manager, as opposed to I didn't know when I was 24, 25 when I was doing this. I was letting too much time go by between feedback and response. I
Mm.
think look at it now, that feedback loop needs to be less than 24 hours. Error occurs, conversation during our 1% better huddle, right? How can we make that better?
Mm. Well, what are some key strategies that you've been using either last year or starting this year that's made a big impact for you?
So last year we were doing training twice a week. We increased that training to every single day, and that's been tremendous, right?
Mm.
That's last year I was thinking more about it like, it's fatiguing. Why do we need to meet so often? Why do we need to meet so often? Didn't make sense to me. But now, I had a mentor that really nailed that into me. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's commit to this. And we've been doing it now for about 2 months. And I just been seeing the tremendous growth in everyone when you're kind of closing that feedback loop.
Mm. Well, what do you think's the most common mistake that you see investors make that you think could be really easily avoided?
Great question. Everyone understands the power of leverage when it comes to capital markets, like, 20% down when they go to get lended 80% of the value. But no one sees the value of leverage when it comes to documentation of systems and process, right?
Mm.
When you in a really strong system, it could be taught, learned, put into place by many other people in your business without you being present. It's the same level of leverage. It just doesn't get as utilized by investors as much as it should be, right? So I think systems and process is something most investors really don't use. If I had to add another one to that, um, not understanding their numbers. I think when markets change, I think we always think that yesterday's price is today's price. And they'll do like a 6-month CMA where they're looking at things in a longer horizon. I think you got to make sure when we're looking at a shorter time frame, we got to look at what that 90 days is looking like. Sometimes even 60 days, right? You got to get tighter. You got to get closer and change your underwriting criteria based on the market and what's happening in the market in the moment.
Yeah. There's a lot of people in this business that do, 50 plus deals, 100 plus, 200 plus deals a year. And there's a lot of onesie twosies that do a couple. What do you think separates the top operators from everyone else in your experience?
They're able to hire quicker. They're able to train quicker. They hold those people that they train accountable quicker. Um, and then scale compounds because they're able to do all those things quicker. They're getting their cash conversion cycle is smaller. So whatever marketing dollars they spend out there, they get back sooner, which allows them to spend more marketing dollars in different areas. They believe and they spend a lot of time on brand. And then I think the brand then echoes to all their other marketing channels. It lifts everything else up. I know you and I talk about TV all the time. but it's one of those marketing channels that truly lifts every other channel up, right? It's one of those marketing channels that, okay, maybe you won't get the return on ad spend on 30 days like a PPL, but I promise you're going to get it in the year. It's all about that time horizon, right? I think the bigger operators truly do concentrate on brand. And I think when you're a smaller guy, you don't have the oxygen, aka the capital, to wait around a year and a half, 2 years for that one mailer, for that one commercial, for that one number that that seller wrote down on the piece of paper to get back to you, because you're not in it long enough to see the dividends come by. So I
Mm.
think a big difference there.
Do you see a big difference with, obviously there is a big difference, but do you personally see it between inbound and outbound of how the lead is like when it comes to the sales process? Do you treat them any differently or do you kind of treat them the same?
We treat them, we try to rise the entires. We try to keep the same standards for everyone, but we can't because they're from different channels. So they need to be treated, by definition differently. There is a stark difference between a cold channel lead and a inbound channel lead. Um, and it all comes from like the intention. Like one we reached out to them during the beginning stages of their home selling process, as opposed to someone that reached out to us. They have made a lot of mental concessions already to ring that phone anyways, right?
Mm.
I don't want to say it's an easier sale, but it's definitely a much more educated conversation when both parties kind of want to reach the same alternative, as opposed to sometimes for a cold channel lead, it just requires a lot more nurturing. It requires a lot, either they're paying to go higher or their numbers to become more realistic. It's one of those things that I still go on appointments just to stay fresh and to be able to give really good sales advice. That's been the difference that I've been able to tell. Also, our cash cycles when it comes to inbound, it's a lot shorter than it is for our sales cycle when it is for outbound. So there's a lot of factors there for sure.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned like it's further along in the process when it starts. It's one of those things like I've always thought about it. Outbound's convincing someone, inbound's just helping them, and it really does, make a big difference. What do you like? What's the biggest difference that you've made in marketing over the past year? Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's been going deeper into kind of really understanding our data and our return on ad spend and having a much longer time horizon. I think with mail, it's one of those situations where I still get calls from mailers I've sent out a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, right? So it's like to go and say that, my return on ad spend wasn't enough for a 6 month period. It's not, it just doesn't give the full story.
Mm,
Um, Understand things that, that common phrase where people overestimate what they're going to do in a year and then underestimate what they can achieve in a decade. The same thing applies to certain marketing channels. The time horizon needs to be kind of underwritten in a very different way.
mm. Do you have any marketing channels that you're looking to add in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to you about this before about TV is something we're looking into. Um, I think I want to increase my mailing campaigns for sure. Um, yeah, so those are two. Definitely want to add TV and definitely want to increase how much mailing we're doing.
Yeah. If you don't mind, what mailing are you doing and what would you like to get to? If you don't want to share, that's totally okay. But um
Roughly around 15 grand a month now. We want to push that off closer to 20.
20. Okay. Yeah, typically I see with direct mail, like you can get a pretty good ad spend out there. Um One thing about TV is there's just such a high ceiling. You can spend so much. Obviously, the return still has to be there, but there's so much cap space in those markets. One thing I always like to ask everyone, everyone looks at the word success differently. They define it differently. They measure it differently, and they strive for it differently. How do you define the word success? How do you strive for it, and how do you measure it in your day to day?
So when we first started, it was tough because I started off with my girlfriend. So I wanted it, I wanted the business to get off the ground and to be able to have enough to provide. So once we reached that level, I was like, okay, well, I've succeeded in that sense. But I've also come to the definition that succeeding or success is just really the journey. It's not
Mm,
this kind of destination. It's really something that kind of ebb and flows and also kind of just continues to evolve. But my definition of success is if my family is happy, if I'm in good health and good shape, and if I'm able to bring my ideas to fruition and be able to represent them in the real world, then I've succeeded. And I think with what we have thus far, I've succeeded in that sense. But there's more that we want to accomplish. So we're constantly in that journey.
yeah. Well, what do you think the biggest change in the real estate market is right now?
I talk to Steve about this all the time, but I'll say AI has definitely been a huge disruptor in the sense that, there's whole companies built off cold calling that have entire call systems and call centers that are now kind of being eradicated by AI, but also that increases how much more valuable inbound marketing channels are. When the market gets, when it becomes so cheap to just cold call and you have all these robocalls and you see all these updates that are happening with the iPhone that where, you have to say your name and why you're calling and the reasons for calling. I see that industry slowly kind of trickling away. Um, it's a bit of a weird, it's a bit of a weird time, right? Where AI can really take over a lot of those roles and people are doing a lot of things over the phone. So, coupled with like, you see our president putting on pressure into the Fed chair and things like that. It's a little odd, right? Because you want them to act autonomously and to make decisions based on the true situation of the economy, whether good or bad. Um, so it's definitely a weird time. That's why our underwriting has become a lot more restrictive. We stopped purchasing houses ourselves directly, except for deals that make a lot of sense in our home market. We're trying to price things accordingly. We're looking at a 90-day sale window. We're trying to stay in markets that make a lot of sense. But also, we're blessed to be in Boston, one of the most insulated markets in the entire country, right? A lot of waves come and go. The market in Boston stays the same, right? So just being mindful of all that.
I'm a big proponent in AI won't be able to fully replace humans in a sales role. I truly think that people really want to talk to people. What do you think that AI is going to change, and what do you think it's going to do in a sense of replacing what and how much it will replace?
Yeah, I mean, in all the non-direct speaking roles, right? Like texting. For example, I have ISAs that just call and say, "Hey, you're interested in selling now in the near future," right? I I can see AI doing that, right? I can see AI doing a lot of the underwriting. I can see AI having a lot of those email exchange conversations where they're kind of an autopilot for your email or marketing campaigns or texting campaigns. People still want to communicate with a real person. I'm still part of the belief that in-person appointments, direct to face sale, belly to belly sales is the way we do it in our business. And I think it's still the preferred way. Um, AI will replace a lot of the technical background stuff, but I agree with you. People still want to talk to a real person. But I think about if you had to look at a pyramid of the minimal tasks of like just determining interest,
Mm,
I think an AI chatbot or a robot could do that.
yeah.
So
Especially that older demo. I mean, obviously we're going for that mid to high age, mid to low income. Like they're always looking for something to be a scam, right? So it's like when you hear AI, it's kind of an easy tell. But I definitely think some of the lower level stuff would be pretty easy to replace with that. Um, I want to challenge you with this next one. Let's say the business completely goes away, the team goes away. You can keep all the knowledge you've learned over the years, but everything goes away. What would you focus on first to rebuild?
what would I focus on first to rebuild? Great question. Um, what would I focus on first to rebuild? In terms of like the operations of the business, like where we're at now.
Yeah, just in general to get back to where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, ironically enough, the first thing I would do is I would write down all my knowledge right away, right? just kind of document as much as I possibly can. Um, I would get I would try to get one inbound marketing channel, and I would just go out and close some deals, right? That's usually what I would go ahead and do.
Mm, I like it. I know a lot of people start with outbound. I always like I never understood it unless you don't have the means for an inbound channel. Like, we have so many people that come from, texting, cold calling, and then switch over to TV or another inbound form. And it's always a shock of like how much easier it is. I've never understood unless someone again didn't have the means to. It doesn't just go into that in the first place. What do you think the biggest difference is from the inbound world to the outbound world? Like, if you had one major difference, what do you think that would be?
I think is intent. I think the best way I
Mhm.
thought of was like, the inbound world is like if you're at the car dealership and they show up to your office going like, "Hey, I would like to test drive this car," as opposed to, "Hey, I'm calling local car owners in the area. I just wanted to see if you wanted to try a new Nissan Rogue, whatever the fuck, whatever it may be. Like, would you like
Yeah.
to come?" And I'll run a promo. Um, I think, cold channels require a lot more leads for you to be able to find a really good opportunity. And I think inbound is, the intent is there for them. They're they're purposely and intentionally looking for the service that we're providing.
Mm.
It's a different conversation.
Yeah. Well, what drives you to keep innovating and succeeding in this space? Like, what really pushes you to go?
Great question. So, I was raised with little funds growing up. My parents gave me kind of everything I needed and very little of what I wanted. I went to school, in the Boston public school system. I went to college on a full ride. Didn't really have much. And the thought process has always been, many people are like, "Hey, you got to go towards aspiration." I'm just very anxious of going broke. So like, I'm just always hustling, always grinding. So that's a far-fetched reality for me. So for me, it's always been economically, and I want to change the lives of not only of my family, but the people around me. I love to see, when employees kind of play, especially closers, when they commit to themselves and they start getting new things and they start moving forward. And, we help them buy investment properties. And, it's just very rewarding for me. Because for me, when I got into this space, there wasn't anyone like me to help me. So I like to be that person. So that's been great for me. So that's one of the many reasons why I keep going.
I love that. I love that. Where can people learn more about you if someone's interested in learning more about you, or if maybe someone's in the Boston market listening to this and has some deals for you? Well, where can they reach out to you? Where can they find you?
Yeah. So on all social media, I go by Leo Buys Homes. Our company name is Eclipse Buys Homes. Yeah. So reach out on social. We're there. I'm trying to be more of a social media person. It's weird because I'm in my 20s and I'm not. So, but nonetheless, I'm trying to be. So we're getting there.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, Leo, thank you so much for taking the time today. Everyone, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sona. I appreciate it. Thank you.